One of the massively frustrating aspects of magic and the occult is the definition of words. Singular words that mean something very specific in one context have been taken over to mean something completely different. And we can't say, no, it doesn't mean that, because it does mean that to such a large group of people. And I've made videos about this in the past, and I've railed about it, and I've talked about how we can't use the verb to be anymore in any significant way other than in an auxiliary way. I'm not going to bore you with the grammar here, but anyway, when we say this is that, we find ourselves in a very awkward situation where this may not be that in a different context. A witch is someone who performs spells, except when she doesn't perform spells. A human is a person who has 2 eyes, a nose, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, except when they don't have 2 eyes, a nose, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs. And so I find myself very frustrated today as I sit down to talk about the great work and what on earth this concept of the great work is. Because the great work originally comes from the field of alchemy. And in alchemy, it was used by Sir George Ripley and Nicholas Flamel in the context of creating the Philosopher's Stone. But again, what is the Philosopher's Stone? Is it the stone that turns base metals into gold, or is that an allegory? And the truth is that it is both those things, because the people who were engaging in alchemy had as a purpose to create something that could turn base metals into gold. That was their whole goal. It was their mission statement, if you will. But then in the late 19th, 20th century, you have Carl Jung, who is very clear in his statement that alchemy is, in fact, an inner psychological process, and that the processes described by the early alchemists are really an exteriorization of this inner process of individualization. One of the things that the alchemists worked with was the prima materia, the base material, that from which everything is built. If you divide any item enough times, you should reach that prima materia. And for Carl Jung, that prima materia was mind. This sets the whole of alchemy in a very different context. If the prima materia is not physical, if it's not something that can be sensed or touched, but actually it's mind, then this really radically changes everything that the concept of alchemy means. And so we reach the mid-20th century when these various occult magical orders are trying to recreate something like what the Eastern mystical traditions have for the Western mind that has forsaken its magical mystery traditions. And little by little, as these orders manage to break the taboos established by the Christian Church over a period of 1,600 years, these orders manage to find little bits of ancient magical mystery knowledge that still survives, some vestiges upon which they can build a new magical system, something that rests upon actually Western values, Western symbols, the keys that may unlock the Western mind, as opposed to resorting to using the Eastern keys that unlock the Eastern mind, which has been brought up in the East and with very different values and very different culture and a very different mind to be unlocked. It's not reasonable for a Westerner to expect that the same keys will unlock their minds as those that are designed to unlock the Eastern mind. So, okay, 20th century, these various magical orders are seeing the church lose its grip upon society, and they are taking the opportunity to rebuild a system that can unlock the Western mind. And the Western traditions upon which they draw are, for example, the Greek and Egyptian mystery traditions. It's very early days and very little has been rediscovered, but nevertheless, they're very eager to get started and they work with what they have. The tarot is obviously a very important aspect. The Hebrew Kabbalah is also considered to be one of the founding building blocks of Western society. And so that is a appropriated and kind of mangled in order to fit everything else that is being put together. All of this, of course, creates something that works absolutely fine, but you can't call it the original thing, of course. But nevertheless, it works. The grimoires are embraced. Samuel Liddell McGregor Mathers translates a number of them to the best of his ability, and we're very lucky today to have much better translations than the ones of Samuel McGregor Mathers. But of course, without his tentative beginnings, we wouldn't have the amazing stuff that we have today. From champions in the field like Dr. Stephen Skinner and Joseph H. Peterson and the late Jake Stratton-Kent. Now, of course, one of the fields that has grown up in the West but that has been forgotten is alchemy. And so the founders of all these magical orders start really digging into the alchemical texts, and they welcome, of course, Carl Jung's take on alchemy, the idea that alchemy is really a description of an inner human process rather than an outer mechanical and chemical process. And so the great work, the Magnum Opus, which once upon a time simply meant the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone, now means something much more than just that. When the physical, material process of turning base metals into gold is seen as an allegory for an inner process, then the great work, which is the process of becoming able to do that, becomes something different altogether. Now, many of you watching will be aware of Aleister Crowley, the creator of the Thelemic orders, AA and OTO. And I think that in the context of this video, and in the context of the modern world, the word great work is probably best understood in the Thelemic context. Now, am I a Thelemist? I agree with a lot of the Thelemic philosophy. I in fact base a lot of my own philosophy on Thelemic philosophy. Am I a Thelemist though? No, I don't belong to any magical order. I don't belong to any kind of group, and I certainly wouldn't say that I follow a particular curriculum in any way. But I have to admit that a lot of the magical material that I've read has been Thelemic, and therefore a lot of my magical understanding is probably in line with the Thelemic understanding of what magic is. It was a hugely influential movement. I'd be very surprised if anyone wasn't at least partially influenced by the thoughts of Aleister Crowley, whether they admit or even realize it or not, of course. And I think to understand the concept of the great work in a Thelemic context, you first of all have to understand their concept of the will, right? You've probably heard of the famous words of Aleister Crowley, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And this is used, of course, by angsty teenagers around the world, of course, who use it to say, yeah, Crowley said we should be able to do what I want. So that's not quite what "do what thou wilt" in fact means. The will in Thelema is extremely important. It's central, in fact. In fact, that's what Thelema means. The idea of will with a capital W is the idea of your divine purpose, what your higher self wills for you, not what your lower self wills for you. What my lower self will is a really nice mansion and, very comfortable sofa and watching TV for probably longer than I get to watch TV in real life. But my higher self, in fact, what many people would call my holy guardian angel, has different ideas for what's right for me. So a lot of the Thelemic process is about getting in touch with your higher will and finding out, in fact, what your higher will is. Once you've found out what your higher will is, what your holy guardian angel expects of you, your great work is to then go ahead and do it. You can see that there's a parallel here with actual alchemy, where you've got base metals like lead and kind of non-noble metals on one side, and then on the other side you've got your everyday self, right? The person who hasn't thought very much about philosophy in any kind of way and who is just going about their daily business, trying to survive essentially as an evolved animal. And the idea in both of these cases is to take what is base and to make it noble. So in the case of alchemy, you're taking the lead and turning it into gold. And in the case of personal development, you've got the basic human being who needs to be individuated and turned into someone who is following their divine calling, their divine purpose, their true will, the will of their holy guardian angel, which in Thelema is equal to their higher self. Well, that's all well and good, but how do I discover what my true will is, what my holy guardian angel wants of me? Well, the rite of Abramelin is precisely about establishing knowledge and conversation with one's holy guardian angel. And the whole point is to meet your holy guardian angel in a very tangible way. And no, if you've seen the film A Dark Song, that's not an accurate representation, but it is a nice metaphor for what that meeting feels like and what kinds of change of heart might happen upon that meeting. Well, that change of heart is really interesting because that is precisely the moment when you change from being a base human being to being gold, the kind of human being who understands their true will. I think the best way I can describe it is that you no longer do what is right because you've been told that it's the right thing to do, but rather because you know that it is, in fact, the right thing to do. The right thing to do no longer is following a set of rules, because you can see that those rules sometimes won't apply to what is right to do. And you'll find yourself doing what is right because anything other than what is right makes no sense. Now, am I recommending that everyone go out and do the rite of Abramelin? No, I mean, especially not since we found a more complete version of the rite of Abramelin, which takes 18 months and no longer just 6. What I will say, however, is something that I've said before, and that is that magic is not a path. Magic is a tool that can help you along a path. It can even help you to find a path. In the case of the Book of Abramelin, for example, that is a magical process that helps you to find a path, but it is not itself a path. The path that you must follow is the path that is given to you divinely. And it's not up to me to decide for you which god or which entity is going to give you that path, is going to inspire you to get onto that path, etc., etc. But what I will say is that that path needs to feel congruent. It needs to feel right. That doesn't mean it needs to feel easy, and very often the right path isn't easy at all. But in a way, it is easy because you feel like you're doing the right thing, and the difficulties that arise are easily surmounted because you know that you're surmounting them for the right reasons. Now, I'm very curious to know what you think. First of all, is what I've been talking about today something that resonates with you, something that you recognize from your own life, or something that you haven't yet reached, and something that you're striving towards? And for those of you who already have reached that point, who are already doing your great work, what was that initiation point? What was that specific process that you did to get past that stage, to get from that state of an unskilled life to knowing what you were doing and putting all your effort into doing what is right? What is right for you, of course. You're no longer being guided by man-made rules, because you can see that those rules are there to be a structure, a guide for people who don't have that natural path in front of them. Let me know down in the comments how it happened for you. I'd be very, very interested to know. Thank you ever so much for watching. As always, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and to click that little bell button. The way YouTube works nowadays is that if you don't click on that little bell, you don't get to see more of my videos. You get to see possibly more videos like the one you've just seen. So if you want to see more of my videos very specifically, yeah, the little bell button is the way to do that. And if you'd like to support my channel in a very direct way, then the Patreon is the best way to do it. The Patreon gives you access to these videos 1 week in advance, just without any of the visual stuff, the GIFs, the memes, etc., etc. Just me talking to you with nothing extra. And it also gives you access to the Foolish Fish Discord. Lots and lots of very cool channels, over 300 different magic-related topics. And you can find the instructions on how to join the Discord down in the description below. I'll take the opportunity to say a big thank you to the Level Infinity members, David Venturini, Caitlin Kopok, Aritz Murueta Ramos, Danny Barr, Howard Wolf, Linda Hendricks, Stephen Hunter, and Susanna Red Elves. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And thank you also to all the Level 3 members whose names you can see scrolling up on the left-hand side over here. Level Infinity and Level 3 members also receive a form at the beginning of every month where they can fill in their names under specific deities that I invoke on a daily basis, and I bring their names in front of those deities in these daily planetary devotions. Once again, thank you to everyone who watched the video all the way to the end here. Please look after yourselves and each other, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye-bye.